What is going on, y'all? Happy
Good
Thursday.
afternoon, sir. Thirsty Thurs for some people who might be celebrating the start of a long weekend. Hopefully for most people, if not everybody. Little Memorial Day festivities.
Yeah, I wasn't even tuned into that until a few days ago when my girlfriend told me, man.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Hopefully everybody's got Monday off.
I don't pay attention to holidays until they are upon us.
I pay attention when I know that I'm getting a day off, and hopefully it includes maybe like an early dismissal from work on Friday. That's always a nice little bonus.
That's the smart way to go about it. But yeah, definitely.
Nice
always
little
looking
bonus.
forward to those holidays. But yeah,
so
happy Thursday, everybody. What's going on?
Yeah, just after this is the last weekend of May. We've been talking about this. It's like we're about to turn the page to June. This is when everybody really starts shifting their focus because we got mandatory mini camps coming up, and then after
it's
that,
also the time where every single fluff piece in the world is out there about every player that you're never going to hear about in the regular season.
Yeah, and everybody's in the best shape of their life right
What's going on, Alex? How you doing, man?
Everybody's in the best shape of their life. Everybody looks great.
Everybody looks
throwing
fantastic. The prettiest ball, and you heard that thing from Tyreek Hill that Tua's got the prettiest ball I've ever seen, despite the fact that he's been playing with Patrick Mahomes for the past 5 years. Like, really?
Yeah. Plus freezing. Saw a report that Trey Lance's finger is very strong, so whatever that's worth. Though I did see one little negative thing today. Mecole Hardman's got a tweaked hamstring in OTAs, so
early dismissal from the stream. Hey man, I don't know about that. The objective, we'll see.
No, never.
Let's hope not. Let's hope we don't get kicked off our own stream here.
The goal here is to make this feel like not work.
Exactly.
Make this feel like something you don't want to like. I remember in high school, right? Like, because I was such a grade A student, I just would stare at the clock, just like, come on, hurry up. Now it's just, transitions to work. Now I'm like, oh my God, just 5 o'clock, please hurry up.
Yeah, when you look up and it's only 2:30 or something, and you still got another 2 hours to go, it's like,
or 9:15 in the morning.
9:15,
yes,
8 o'clock.
Yeah.
5 minutes from when you clocked in, same thing.
5 minutes after my alarm went off, same thing. But not this. Not this. This we hopefully want to be fun, as always. So taking questions as always, taking any talking points as always.
Yep.
But today you wanted to touch on a little bit on ADP because it's really starting to round into form now. Now that the draft is over and all of the major landing spots have been determined, at this point there's not going to be any major player movement. So we're really starting to settle in.
We think, unless a player like Terry McLaurin gets moved or something like
that.
Well,
the next big domino is a major injury.
Yes.
That's the next big domino that is predictable. We just don't predictable as far as we unfortunately expect it to happen because it always happens. The question is to who and when.
A big injury to one, maybe more than one player. Baker Mayfield finally getting moved to another team, and some sort of resolution with the Deshaun Watson situation is due to happen sometime within the next 2 months. We're not going to really speak on it today, but it is something that we are all waiting for. Let's be real. We're waiting for the hammer to drop or the shoe to drop or whatever. But yo, you got booted. The objective.
Oh,
we apologize. We don't know what is going on there. We hope it's not the technicals. We hope everything is going okay, technologically speaking. Let us know if it isn't. But hey, sorry about that. The objective. But yeah, today we wanted to go over some ADPs for some players. We did a some sleeper redraft mocks last night with the members, and it exposed the ADPs on sleeper did get better. Nick was keeping an eye on that.
Still got a ways to go.
There's still some players falling through the cracks here, and that's what we're going to get into today. Some of these players that fell through the cracks, or at least thus far through the offseason have, based on ADP.
Yeah, let me bring up a couple of... I know one of the more popular common platforms is Yahoo and ESPN. I'll pull up their ADP as well. The source that I frequently use is Underdog, which, by the way, they opened another best ball tournament today, the Puppy, only $5 an entry. I feel like I'm a marketing guru for them, but I've already jumped in a couple slow drafts for that. Again, only $5. It's a fun little big time thing to play for.
What's the prize pot for that?
So I can
give them a
tell you
little
that
bit
right
more
now.
of a promo. What's the
$500,000 in prizes.
Eesh. Okay.
So now the Best Ball Mania, that's a $25 entry, but that has $10 million in prizes. So
wild. Who would have thought we'd be here a few years ago when just talking fantasy wise? Who would have thought we'd be at a place where there would be multiple $10 million contests all told on a platform like Sleeper?
Yeah, I mean, these tournaments are difficult too because it's absolutely top heavy as far as the big prizes. I don't think you can, the way it works is the regular season is similar to in like a redraft league or a dynasty league, and then the playoffs start same time, like week 15. Those are knockout rounds. You have to be in a certain position within the group that you get assigned to in the playoffs to advance week 15, and then again week 7 or 16, and then week 17 it's like a group of finalists, and you got to be in like the top 8 at probably around 450 people or so to get a real big time cash prize.
And you're playing with everybody and their moms, because everybody, like all fantasy analysts are in there, all the big names.
Everybody's
in there more than once, more than twice. The big sharks in terms of the fantasy betting world have put in 1,000 lineups into it just to see if they can break even and get one into the top 100 and whatever. But yeah, man. Yeah,
it's definitely
if you're playing
difficult.
in those ones. Let's hope you pick the magic lineup or the magic roster to where you can go all the way. Stranger things have happened, but it's getting tougher and tougher.
To that point, I mean, ADP is an important factor as far as, it generally speaking, you'll hear a lot of fantasy analysts say, try to, don't play it to a T, but work the ADP. Use the ADP to your advantage. You're using, because all of the sharks, all of the big time guys are in there.
And have been in there. They've been capitalizing off of the depressed ADPs for rookies and the depressed ADPs for players like Rashad Bateman and stuff like that, and who have gotten a bump due to what's happened in the offseason thus far. So,
yeah, they have their fingerprints on what the ADP is at now. They have heavily influenced it. So it is a good measuring stick. It is a good piece of information to use. And I know that's something that you wanted to touch on today. So I personally use Underdog as far as their ADP. We will probably reference that more than a couple of times today.
Yep.
If you're seeing ADP from other services, other resources, by all means use that if you're familiar with it, if you like it, if that's what you want. But today, for this conversation, and again, we can always deviate if anybody has specific questions or want to bring anything up in the chat. But for the purpose of the conversation, we will use Underdog ADP. To base our thoughts on certain guys.
I'll also reference the ADP aggregates from fantasyfootballcalculator.com.
Okay.
average the ADPs over the course of a 10-day span, the last 10 days, and give you an output. So it is relatively up to date, but I would like to see. It would be interesting to see how they match up with underdog ADPs. But let's start this off.
Let's do it.
All right. So I'm going to work in some of these historical situation comps into these ADPs and these players that we're talking about. So for the first one, I want you to go back in time to the end of the 2012 season. Eli Manning has just beat Tom Brady for the second time. And Antonio Brown, who's 5'10", 185 pounds, ran a 4.48 at his pro day.
Yeah.
Whose best comparable on playerprofiler.com for what it's worth is Stephon Diggs. Replaces Mike Wallace, who ran a 4.33 in the 40 as the Pittsburgh Steelers' number 1 wide receiver. Why do I bring up that situation? Because fast forward literally 10 years. And there's a player whose best comparable on Player Profiler is Stephon Diggs, just like Antonio Brown, who was replacing somebody who just got traded, who ran a 4.32 to Mike Wallace's 4.33. And that's Rashad Bateman. Ran a 4.48 in the combine, which is the same exact 40 time that Antonio Brown ran 10 years earlier at his pro day. And he's replacing somebody who runs a 4.33. And both Antonio Brown and Rashad Bateman's best comparable player on playerprofiler.com is Stephon Diggs. And right now, Rashad Bateman's ADP on fantasyfootballcalculator.com at least, which is pulling data from 679 fantasy football mock drafts between May 16th and May 26th, is 114. And he can be had at pick 6 in the 10th round, which I think is absolutely crazy. And it would be really interesting to see what his ADP is in underdog, to see if there's much of a discrepancy there. If there is, that would lead me to believe that smarter drafters are drafting on underdog than fantasy football calculator. But that's something that you can exploit, because we saw Rashad Bateman go late in the mock drafts that we were doing on Sleeper last night. And I'm not saying he's going to be 2013 Antonio Brown. The historical situational comp is there. And theoretically, you can get this player in the 10th round. So what's his ADP on underdog?
Maybe on Sleeper, yeah, it's definitely higher than that on Underdog. His ADP is 60. So the market, as far as competitive best ball drafts, has certainly corrected to the point where he now has to be drafted by the end of the 5th round if you want to secure him.
So in best balls in underdog, where the player base is much more locked in,
yep,
his ADP is basically cut in half, because his ADP on Fantasy Football Calculator over the last 10 days aggregated is 114. So you're saying you can get him at basically 60?
Get him at 60, right at the end of the 5th round, maybe top of the 6th.
That's still... You're still drafting him at the low end.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting a wide receiver 1 in the 6th round. 5th round, but...
Yeah, at the end of the 5th round, you're getting a wide receiver 1. You can still exploit the ADPs on Rashad Bateman right now.
Baltimore's got 259 vacated targets, which feels like a lot just from the departure of Marquise Brown and the likes of, like, say, Devontae Freeman and Latavius Murray. But Baltimore's got significant work available in the passing game. They didn't really do a ton in free agency. They also, Sammy Watkins as well. So there's a good amount of work available. 75% of Baltimore's wide receiver target share from 2021 is available. 75%. That is a significant amount, and is probably right up there around tops in the league. Not the highest. That might more like belong to the Packers and the Chiefs. But Baltimore is comfortably, I would say, in the top 10 of vacated wide receiver targets from 2021 to 2022. There's a ton of work available. There's not a single player in the wide receiver room. I'm not including Mark Andrews here because he's a tight end. There's nobody in the wide receiver room that can match Rashad Bateman from a talent perspective on Baltimore, nor the draft capital. He was a late first-round pick, but a first-round pick is a first-round pick. Baltimore course-corrected last year, a lot out of necessity because they lost their entire backfield before the season could even start.
And had a very depleted defense as well.
But yeah, and that's still a work in progress. Rookies don't automatically make you better overnight, usually. That being said, Baltimore course corrected to a point where they were one of the teams throwing the ball on first down more than any other team. I expect that to regress back to the mean a little bit, but they were not afraid to uncork it on first down, and therefore that becomes more of a trend throughout the game overall. Talking about the team that we most associate with a ground and pound rushing attack. This is a very favorable situation for Rashad Bateman. Let me just go in and confirm the type of players that are going around him. Right. So just like going up and down the list briefly and going down the list. Players going about 4 or 5 spots ahead of him. J.K. Dobbins. I think I'd rather take a shot on Bateman. Allen Robinson, Gabe Davis, Juju Smith-Schuster are the 3 receivers being drafted ahead of him. Travis Etienne and Antonio Gibson are also ahead of him. And then right below him are Michael Thomas, who is still rehabbing, Kyler Murray, who we do like as a quarterback, Josh Jacobs, Brandon Cooks, Darnell Mooney. So there are, to be fair, a lot of names in that area that we do like and will vouch for.
He should be going ahead of Gabe Davis. I love Gabe Davis. He should be going ahead of Gabe Davis.
Gabe Davis is at best his team's wide receiver too.
He should be going ahead of Juju Smith-Schuster.
Yeah, you can make that argument. I wouldn't say it's definitive, but you can make that argument. Gabe Davis, I agree with, though. As much as we like Gabe, he is his team's wide receiver, too. And I don't think he's ever seen a target share more than, 15%?
Yeah. And he's been a part-time player for his whole career outside of a stretch in last year's playoffs. And people are drafting him like he's set to have last year's playoffs all throughout the course of the 2022 season. His target share through the playoffs should look a whole lot more, or his target share in 2022 should look a whole lot more like it was in the playoffs, but he has been far from a full-time player throughout his career thus far.
Yep. I mean, even Allen Robinson, who I think is has been a wide receiver 1 before last year's disaster, slides into a great situation with the Rams, but will be his team's wide receiver 2. Bateman will be his team's wide receiver 1. And yes, you could argue Mark Andrews is the Ravens' version of Cooper Kupp, but Bateman will be the X receiver and will have an every down role for this team. Can we say the same about will Allen Robinson be on the field every single play for the Rams, especially late in the season if, in fact, they do bring Odell Beckham back? So it's a fair question, I think. And I like Allen Robinson, but I think it's a fair question to bring up.
Absolutely, and I say he should be drafted ahead of Juju because the situation in terms of the number 1 target being a tight end is the same in both places. But the carpet, and I know that Pat Mahomes passes historically more than Lamar Jackson, and most likely will this season. But they've really tried to fill out their wide receiver core as much as possible through the draft and not to a super large extent, but also through free agency. The Ravens have done the exact opposite. So that's why I say, to me, Rashad Bateman slightly ahead, not significantly ahead, but slightly ahead of Juju Smith-Schuster, because we should see a lot of Sky Moore. We should see not a lot, but we should see them try to work in MVS, who they just signed to a large deal.
Yeah, they gave him some decent money.
Yeah, and I know Miko Hardman did get injured today. He should still be utilized in that offense a decent amount. So to me, I would still go Rashad Bateman just a hair over Juju Smith-Schuster as well, who is being drafted ahead of him on Underdog.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fair assessment. Juju could come off the field in maybe run down situations as a slot receiver. Bateman, I don't think, comes off the field as the X. He's going one spot ahead of Michael Thomas, who we have not seen for 2 years. Going a couple spots ahead of Brandon Cooks, who we do like, but let's call a spade a spade. I much prefer Lamar Jackson's wide receiver 1, and again, as much as I like Brandon Cooks, then Davis Mills wide receiver 1, and then Darnell Mooney. Kind of the same argument right now. As much as we want to believe in Justin Fields, we don't have to believe in Lamar Jackson. He's already proven that he can do it at a high level.
Yeah, he has led the league in touchdowns before.
He's been a unanimous MVP.
Come on.
Been a unanimous MVP. So, yeah, give me Rashad Bateman at an ADP of 60, and I won't think twice about it. You're right, Objective. At that point in the draft, a player of his caliber should have been gone, I would say, at least 5 picks later. Maybe even a little bit higher. I'll even go as far as to say guys like Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy are going ahead of him.
We'll get there. They're on my list here to talk about today.
I think he should be. I think he should be in that tier. But that's anyway. I just wanted to throw that out there. Yeah, I think it's a good call out about Bateman and how he's. I think even still at an ADP of 60, could be a little bit undervalued.
And if you can draft on platforms that aren't Underdog and take advantage of the fact that he is probably further down the list than most people would think.
Yeah, where's DraftKings have him?
Again, this is ADPs taken from mock drafts done over the past 10 days. He's 114. And it's over the past 10 days, so people are drafting over the last 10 days like like Hollywood Brown is still there. So take advantage of that. In platforms other than Underdog. And using nerd, Gabe Davis is going to be a beast this year. I agree, but got to hold that in check a little bit, that excitement in check a little bit. Bateman is just getting an opportunity because Hollywood Brown isn't there, but he didn't have a breakout rookie year better than Gabe Davis's. Gabe Davis got over 600 yards and 7 touchdowns in his rookie year. True, but Gabe Davis also played a full season. Rashad Bateman was working his way back from a groin injury for the first 6 weeks, so you cannot hold that against him.
Right. I think it was like core muscle surgery.
Right. If you extrapolate his totals over the full season based on what he did when he started being involved in the offense and seeing the field, he would have had a better year than Gabe Davis had. Maybe not touchdowns-wise, but definitely usage and yardage-wise.
All right. I don't see FanDuel. FanDuel doesn't appear to have NFL contests up yet. If anybody else sees them, please let me know. But I don't see them. Let me check DraftKings to see if they have contests yet. Man, how long has it been since I signed into these accounts? Anyway, we like
you're
Rashad
all Underdog all the time, man.
I am all Underdog all the time.
And User Nerd, I get your point. That Gabe Davis.
You're talking to a Bills fan. So you don't have to, you don't have to pump Gabe
right
to John.
But just looking realistically, man, Bateman is gonna be heavily utilized this year. They opted to trade away their number 1 wide receiver because they thought the one that they drafted in 2021 was good enough to still run a competent offense around.
Ascend to the X role while still doing what they want to do.
That is a supreme vote of confidence from the team who knows more than anybody here about Rashad Bateman. And
the GM came out after the draft, after that move was made, and I'm paraphrasing what he said here, but he said as much. He was like, we believe in Rashad Bateman and his talent and why we made him a first-round pick. I'm paraphrasing what specifically said, but he did say that.
The last time we saw really a move like this, again, Antonio Brown, Mike Wallace, and you said it even before then with Santonio Holmes and Mike Wallace.
Yeah, was it Holmes Mike Wallace? To Wallace to AB, something like that?
Yeah, and if you look at organizationally, yeah, the Steelers have always found good wide receivers, but organizationally, from a GM standpoint, if you were to say one team is comparable to what the Steelers have done in terms of consistency, really,
the Ravens are right there.
Is the Ravens. Yeah, they might not have specifically the wide receiver drafts that the Steelers have, but from a just overall personnel standpoint, they have almost, if not better, or if not straight up on par with the Steelers, just as good of a player evaluation.
I think top to bottom at this, I think they've surpassed them.
There you go.
I do. I think there's. I give them all the credit in the world. I don't know if there's a front office year in and year out I respect more than theirs.
If you got the Ravens saying we can let go of our number one wide receiver because the guy that we already have in the room is that much better,
yeah,
then you gotta take that seriously.
Tip my cap to them. Yeah, I do.
So that's the first guy. ADP's
one.
based off and his historical comps wise. Did you bring up DraftKings?
I don't see. Oh, sorry, DraftKings. I was sorry. I was looking at FanDuel. Let me pull this up right now. What's my location? You don't need to worry about my location. All right, it's checking it. If you want to move on, I'll see if they have any type of ADP data here. But FanDuel doesn't have any NFL contests up.
The last thing I'll say is, Gabe Davis is undervalued right now too. So within that conversation, in terms of ADPs, Gabe Davis has a depressed ADP as well, based off of what we're projecting for him. But he is in the next tier for me of wide receivers, just inside that next tier, as really what are projected to be really good wide receiver twos for their team, but not quite wide receiver ones for their team, because Rashad Bateman is a wide receiver one for his team, and there's literally nobody else there in the wide receiver room, like Nick alluded to. That's why he is in a tier above for me. But Gabe Davis also has some ADP correction and some ADP value to be had there.
Bateman's ADP on DraftKings is 67, so okay. a little lower. They have a couple other guys. They've got some. They have their own rankings. They have Amon-Ra ahead of him.
That's wild. Okay.
It's not so drastically different, but obviously he's 7 spots farther down, so little different. It looks like they've got a few more quarterbacks ahead of him. So that's just their ADPs.
That happens.
Yeah. So he's slightly more. He's about, I would say, he's a half a round cheaper, probably on average, on DraftKings versus Underdog.
And before we get to the next person I have in mind here, User Nerd says, by what you said about moving Hollywood Brown, is that true about the Titans moving away from A.J. Brown for Treylon Burks? No, because technically the Titans don't know what they have in Treylon Burks. We have seen Rashad Bateman perform on the NFL level as a very consistent target for Lamar Jackson. We haven't seen him be a superstar yet. But we haven't even seen Burks in the NFL yet.
I mean, the line of thinking is similar.
Yes.
But the vote of confidence for Burks, we can't quite go that far, right?
And I think their situation has a lot more to do with contract and injury history for A.J. Brown versus what the Ravens were looking at in Marquise Brown.
I think it would have gotten to that point with Marquise Brown, the contract. I think a contract dispute would have eventually ensued. They got out in front of it sooner than the Titans did about A.J. Brown. So from that perspective, I would argue it is similar. But yeah, the slight difference is even it's a small sample size. We've seen Bateman on the field for 8 games or so. Let's see what Burks can do.
Yeah, and there is a big difference between Marquise Brown and AJ Brown for me. I believe for most people.
Well, AJ Brown is the more talented player. I like Hollywood Brown, but I don't think there's an argument that can be made in any way, shape, or form that he's better than AJ Brown.
Yeah. So there are definitely similarities between the two situations, but there are some nuances in each situation that make them difficult enough or different enough to where it's not a 1-for-1 comparison.
I mean, if the question is, are we advocating drafting Treylon Burks? I would say in 2022 redraft with his ADP, I won't fight that.
No, I won't fight that either.
He's going to get every opportunity, and he's definitely cheaper than Bateman. I don't think that he's significantly cheaper than Bateman. Burks' ADP is 71.8. So in a 12-team draft, he's about a full round cheaper than Bateman. So in theory, you could end up with both of them.
If you're going heavy RB, I mean, there are worse situations to be walking into week 1 than having Treylon Burks and Rashad Bateman starting for you.
Yeah,
if you're running back.
Appreciate it, user nerd. Yeah, happy to have this conversation, and hopefully our feedback is whether we agree or disagree. All we want to do is just be consistent
and if we say
give you guys a reason to come back and hang.
And if we say something you don't agree with, man, feel free to throw in your thoughts into the chat, and we can have a more long drawn out conversation about any of these guys we're gonna bring up. But we appreciate you too, man. Thank you.
Yeah. But the similarities are there. There is a sample size, however small, for Bateman. Not quite yet for Burks, but we like Burks. We believe in Burks. John drafted him 103 in a rookie draft.
Well, that is also situational, but yes.
Sure, but I mean, you wouldn't have drafted him at that high if you don't have some type of belief in the guy.
Well, I say it's situational because I had the guy that I drafted at 104 ranked ahead of the guy that I drafted at 103 and was trying to leverage
you were doing
pick to try to move back and all that.
Playing some chess.
So,
all right.
Saying I drafted him 103 isn't exactly...
you would have taken Garrett Wilson if you just had the 103,
yes.
But you had both picks, and you decided he's one of the two guys I want to come away with.
Especially since Drake London was off the board already, and we already had thoughts about Drake London, but that is somebody that a lot of other people have above both of those guys. But
I took my first share of Drake London.
Man, if there's anybody that's gonna burn us in terms of
it's gonna be Drake London.
Our rankings pre-drafted and post-draft, really, it is.
We are gonna look like geniuses or morons when it comes to him, and there will be no in between.
It's all right, man. It's us and Graham Barfield.
I love Graham.
All right. So for the next historical comp / player ADP deep dive we're doing here,
we're
not gonna go back as far as 2012. This time we're going back to 2018.
All right, a little more recent.
Jordy Nelson was just let go by the Packers after his worst season since 2009. And Davante Adams, at 6'1", 212, steps in with his quarterback being Rodgers, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And prior to 2018 showed flashes, but didn't become an elite wide receiver 1 until age 26. And in 2018, he was the wide receiver 3 in standard and the wide receiver 2 in PPR. Now, there is a player who did not move teams, just like Davante Adams in 2018, plays with a top quarterback in the league, consensus top 3 arm in the league.
Yep.
Showed flashes up until his age 27 season, but this player did not become an elite wide receiver 1 until his age 27 season. It's Mike Williams.
was trying to figure out who you were talking about, but okay.
And not quite the exact size speed comparison that Rashad Bateman and Antonio Brown are. Mike Williams is significantly larger than Davante Adams, 6'4" to 6'1", but both came in at age 26 or at 27 and started performing like a wide receiver one for the first time in their career. Showed flashes before that, but started performing like an elite wide receiver one in age 26, 27. Now the difference is Jordy Nelson was let go by the Packers, whereas Mike Williams is still playing with Keenan Allen.
Re-upped.
So he's not going to have the target share that Davante Adams had when Davante Adams started becoming a perennial top 3 wide receiver in the league. But Mike Williams opened the year last year with 6 touchdowns and 471 yards through 5 weeks and was the wide receiver 3 in standard and the wide receiver 4 in PPR before going a little bit downhill in the middle of the season due to an injury that he suffered in week 5. After week 5, he suffered a knee injury. But once he was healthy again and got over an absence due to COVID, picked it back up and finished strong. Wide receiver 9 in standard and wide receiver 12 in PPR.
Yep, finished strong.
So that's my historical comp from Mike Williams is Davante Adams with more target competition.
So
he's not quite Davante Adams. We know that.
No.
The situation he's in with a top quarterback and the relatively late wide receiver 1 breakout, the comparison stands. And his ADP right now, at least on fantasyfootballcalculator.com, again, data from 679 fantasy football mock drafts between May 16th and May 26th, was 75. ADP of 702.
Oof, that's going to climb. That can't be accurate.
Again, man, that's why I wanted you to look up these ADPs concurrently with me on Underdog. Where is he falling on Underdog? Because that just doesn't seem right to me.
It's completely off and it's not even close. His Underdog ADP is 34.8.
Okay,
so
that sounds 30. A lot closer to where it should be.
Sandwiched right in between Michael Pittman and Jalen Waddle, which I think is more than fair. Going off the board as the wide receiver 14, so just missing being drafted as a wide receiver 1, almost the highest almost ceiling of wide receiver 2 that you possibly can. So relative to his finish last year, it's a slight dip. Now, of course, the thing about ADP is everybody's healthy this time of year, right? 100% of people are healthy. So it evens out, right? There are players like Christian McCaffrey is back healthy. Saquon Barkley is back healthy. Just a couple of names who are now, who are getting drafted over him, who are back healthy. DeAndre Swift, you get my point. So I would say he's getting appropriately drafted as the wide receiver 14 around the middle of the, or right at the top, I would say, of the 4th round in 12-team drafts. That's about where Davante Adams was going before he did it again when he had another elite season and catapulted himself into the 2nd round of drafts before ultimately the past 2 years being a bona fide 1st round pick. So the ADP trajectory, at least on Underdog, is right there. Because even after Davante Adams' first strong year, the following season, you could still get him, I would say, around this same ADP. Now, again, to your point, Davante Adams was the clear alpha X-receiver of Aaron Rodgers. Mike Williams will have those weeks, but he's not the clear alpha as long as Keenan Allen is there. And for what it's worth, Austin Eckler is a top 2 or 3 pass-catching running back in the league. So he'll have his weeks as like the lead dog there as well. That being said, it's a fantastic offense. It's a fantastic quarterback in Justin Herbert. At this point is an easy QB top 3 quarterback, not just redraft, but dynasty as well. In fact, I just watched him go in a slow draft best ball to the 303, which is pick 27 in a 12-team draft. So somebody just went up all the way at the top of the third round and drafted him. It might be a little bit of contingent, contingent-based drafting because they also took Cooper Kupp, but point stands. I literally just watched him go 27th overall. Over Leonard Fournette, over T. Higgins, over his teammate Keenan Allen, over Josh Allen.
There are Las Vegas odds makers that now have Justin Herbert having the best odds at being the QB1 this year over Josh Allen. They just did that. Overnight last night. They made that change.
You can make that argument. You can make that argument for him.
But Las Vegas bettors are putting that on paper, which isn't something you see unless it's a serious possibility.
Unless it's legit, yeah. And Herbert has that argument. He's special.
What's going on, Iron?
What's up, Iron? So it is more than fair, if you believe in this offense, to go get him as soon as your third round pick. Now again,
Herbert
this particular
or Williams?
person.
Who are you talking about here?
Sorry?
Are you talking about Herbert or Williams?
Mike Williams. Going back to your conversation about Mike Williams.
Just want to clarify.
Because I'm in a slow draft puppy, and I got the first pick for the first time, and I took Taylor, and at the turn I took Tyreek Hill and Javonte. Alvin Kamara went the very next pick. Alvin Kamara is sliding to the top of the third round. I think there's more concern growing of a potential suspension, so we're seeing his ADP fall. Plus, he was good last year. He wasn't great.
Right.
Mike Williams went the very next pick. Again, Leonard Fournette's on the board. T. Higgins is on the board. Josh Allen is on the board. His teammate Keenan Allen is on the board. I could keep going.
But it looks like he's being properly valued by ADP on Underdog, whereas in a lot of other not formats, not situations, a lot of other platforms, there you go, he is not being valued where he should be, and you guys can take advantage of that, or at least should be taking advantage of that. We had a question earlier this week from Sam, one of our new members and a friend of ours. He asked, I believe it was, who's better, Mike Williams or was it Christian Kirk? Who did he ask about? It was Mike Williams versus...
It was probably a silly question. If those were the comparisons.
It was either... Because he asked about A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith in another question right after that. And his Williams question did not involve either of those Eagles wide receivers.
No.
But I think it was Mike Williams or Christian Kirk. And it was like a clear cut.
It's not
even close. It's Mike Williams. So if you have people just questioning whether or not, based on Mike Williams' first 4 to 5 years in the league, whether or not he is a wide receiver 1 this year, you guys can take advantage of that. Absolutely. And not just in redraft, not just in best ball, not just in things that have ADP right now. If you can take advantage of that in Dynasty, he's not a young wide receiver, so he should come at maybe a little bit of an age discount. But for over the next 3 seasons, bro, he's set up to be a low end to mid tier wide receiver 1, because Keenan Allen is only going to get older. And Austin Eckler is the same age as him, and we know at what age running backs typically fall off. Austin Eckler's a little bit different of a case because he plays such a versatile role, but it could be coming, in which case, a Mike Williams could be walking into a situation 2 years from now where it's him and nobody else, or him and Josh Palmer, and
they'll
Isaiah
draft a
Spiller.
High.
Right.
They'll draft a wide receiver high, maybe as soon as next year. Now, to be fair, DraftKings does have Mike Williams ranked 34th. So I would say your competitive drafters are appropriately putting him. You have to draft him in the 3rd round. If you want to make sure that you get a player of like him, you got to go into the 3rd round to get him. You can't, I said it originally top of the 4th. Might not be able to wait that long.
No, it looks like it. I mean, and he is a guy that I would make a priority. Once I get to that certain part of the draft, I would make it a priority to try and get him on my squad. Because I believe in him. The only thing that held him back last year was a little bit of a knee injury, and Keenan Allen stayed healthy all season. If he didn't have that knee injury through week 5, week 6, week 7, when he was getting 5 targets a game through that span, early in the season he was getting 8 targets, 10 targets, 12 targets, 14 targets. And that dropped off when he got his knee injury, and it never fully got back to that amount of usage. But if he never got that knee injury, bro, imagine what Mike Williams would have been doing. Imagine just I like Mike Williams a lot in 2022 and beyond, in pretty much all formats.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Iron, we are doing much better. Thank you for
thanks for asking, man.
Much
yeah, we're doing. Yeah, we're on the mend. We're good. You can expect more stuff. You can expect a more consistent flow of content from us starting next week.
Yeah, we've been basically just doing live streams over the past 2 weeks while Nick gets over it, and then once we both were getting over it. But yeah, we'll be back in the driver's seat very soon in terms of getting content out for you almost every day. But yeah, I mean that is, I think my point has been made with regards to Mike Williams. Did you have anything to add there?
No, I mean, just to point out, there's not really any vacated targets to speak of for the Los Angeles Chargers. 134 in total, but most of those actually come from the tight end position from Jared Cook leaving. The wide receiver target share, literally there are 3 vacated targets. They must have had some super deep player down the depth chart walk away who only got 3 targets last year. Couldn't even tell you. Point is, the wide receiver room is very much the same in LA, but Mike Williams was one of the focal points of that. This is not a situation where we have to worry about work available. Mike Williams is absorbing the same amount of work that he received last year, which is 129 targets, and with about 102 vacated from Jared Cook. Does Gerald Everett absorb every single one of those? Maybe.
And you have to ask yourself. I mean, yeah, there might not be vacated targets from other wide receivers outside of the 3 from some unknown player, but Austin Eckler has been very vocal about getting his overall workload scaled back. Do some of Austin Eckler's targets go towards the guy that they just gave 4 years? Was it 4 years, 90 mil? What was it? What was that?
I thought they gave him 3 years, for 60.
3 years, 60. Okay, well,
I think that's what it was.
Yeah, we can look that up for you. But still, regardless, I mean, my point stands. Austin Eckler could be seeing a little bit less work, and some of that work could be going Mike Williams' way. So
could.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about Mike Williams' workload.
No, just wanted to call it out, but yeah, nothing to be worried about there. So yeah. You got to go down to the 3rd round to get him, though.
So next up, position change. This is a guy I'm very interested to see where his ADP is at right now. This is somebody who just got news very recently to where their ADP will still be very much in flux. I wish Alex was here so we could talk a little bit about this guy with Alex. But let's go back in time.
He might be in here. He said hi at the top.
There you go. Maybe he is. Hopefully he is. Let's go back in time to last year. Not quite 2018 to 2012. James Conner, coming off of a season cut short by a bout of COVID, latches on with the Arizona Cardinals. And he's a slow but versatile running back who left Pittsburgh at the age of 26 and became a league winner.
Wasn't an issue last year.
And became a league winner. Let's be real. He brought you to championship. He got
you to the playoffs. He might not have won it for you, like literally week 17, but he sure as hell got you there.
Yeah. So if you drafted him as your 3rd, 4th running back, you are very happy having James Conner, especially in a season like last year where everybody's running backs were getting injured every other week. But who is the 2022 James Conner? It's hard to because a lot of free agent running backs move around. I mean, we saw Damian Williams go to the Bears, and there was a lot of speculation on him. Didn't do anything. It was Khalil Herbert. We saw Mike Davis go to the Falcons. A lot was speculated on him. Didn't do pretty much of anything. It was Cordero Patterson,
but it was Patterson. Yeah.
Right. Even the Raiders getting Kenyon Drake as far as just free agents. All those guys listed were 27, 28 elder running backs who went to other teams and just did not meet expectations at all.
Mm-hmm.
James Conner was a 26-year-old running back who went to another team and did exceed expectations. Who's the next running back who isn't really on everybody's radar as a number 1 running back in the league or even a number 2, who was going to another team around age 26, 27 and should exceed expectations?
Oh boy.
You don't have to look that far.
Oh boy.
Who is it?
Are you talking about Ronald Jones?
I'm talking about Darrell Williams. You don't have to look that far.
Okay.
The next James Conner is literally the guy that just got drafted to James Conner's squad to be James Conner this year. Hear me out.
Oh, wow.
Darrell Williams was 12th in running back targets just last season. He had 57 targets.
Yeah, he got a lot of work there.
He was the 26th overall running back in fantasy points per game, played 17 games. He was a value last season.
Mm-hmm.
He outperformed. He overperformed. Chase Edmonds last year was 17th in running back targets. Excuse me. He had 53 targets last year. Only 4 less than Darrell Williams, but he only played in 12 games.
He missed time, so yeah.
But he was 23rd in fantasy points per game. So he was better in points per game than Darrell Williams was, despite Darrell Williams playing 5 more games. But if you, considering Chase Edmonds is elsewhere, if you flip what Darrell Williams was doing with what Chase Edmonds did last season and then extrapolate, Darrell Williams is going to get 4.41 targets a game while splitting time in a timeshare. That amounts to a 70-catch season in a 16-game total. And this is a running back who's 6 foot, 225 pounds, so he comes with goal line traits. Mm-hmm. He's not a typical pass-catching running back. He's a goal line running back who can catch 70 passes a year. He's not a fast running back, but that I want to say skill set plus the body type and skill set doesn't come along very often. The last time it came along was really James Conner. The Arizona Cardinals, a lot of it has been said about Eno Benjamin and even Keontae Ingram. But Eno Benjamin should prove to you that the Arizona Cardinals have no problem just waiting forever on these young running backs, never really pushing them into a starting role. Keontae Ingram is only a 6th rounder. So the same thing that happened to Eno Benjamin over the last few seasons, now that Darrell Williams is there, could happen to Keontae Ingram, which would suck because I drafted him like he was going to be the RB2 in that that team. But regardless, and a lot has been said about what James Conner did last season on the Arizona Cardinals. But it's not, you shouldn't be looking at it like a one-year thing. You should be looking at who had James Conner's role before James Conner. It was Kenyon Drake, who had 18 touchdowns in 21 games when he started for Arizona from 2019 to 2020. This isn't just James Conner overperformed. This might just be James Conner went to the one place where he was going to be able to get 18 touchdowns or whatever he got. Was it 18?
Yeah, I think it was 18. 15 on the ground and 3 through the air.
He might have overperformed a little bit, but even if he performs at an average level for the Arizona RB1/RB2, Kenyon Drake had 18 touchdowns in 21 games. He almost had a touchdown a game from 2019 to 2020, and then James Conner comes in, has more than a touchdown a game over 17 games. Now Darrell Williams is there. What's Darrell Williams' ADP? I'm going to ignore the ADPs that I have up, basically, because they're all the way off right now. He's listed at 168 on Fantasy Football Calculator. It can be had in the 4th round. What is he on Underdog right now?
204.
And regardless of what he is on Underdog, man, I think he is an extreme value right now.
So ADP of 204, so he's free.
Okay, so the ADP on Fantasy Football Calculator is even lower than that. All right, interesting.
The calculator's higher on him than Underdog
That's
is.
what
Now,
I mean. Yeah.
Part of that is because he was a free agent up until 2 days ago, and so that will climb. I think you might have mentioned, I don't know if this was a slip up, that he's a threat to catch 70 balls. I'm not sure about that. Last year he caught 47.
Well, no, that wasn't a slip up. 4.41. Let's see if I'm doing the math correctly. 4.41 times 16 is 70.56.
Is that targets that he had or catches per game?
Those are targets.
Okay, so let's maybe say like 2 a game.
Okay, did I say catches a game? I meant targets. I apologize. That's my fault. But still,
47 catches last year.
70 target running back with goal line traits.
Maybe like a 35 catch season is still possible for him as the backup. Now, here's my only thing about that. First of all, I think we need to be careful about talking about extrapolation for a running back in this situation, because DeAndre Hopkins will come back week 7. Could he see an uptick in targets? Could he see 4 targets a game weeks 1 through 6? Sure.
I didn't even factor in DeAndre Hopkins not being there. Okay, again, Chase Edmonds, while DeAndre Hopkins was there, when did DeAndre Hopkins get injured? Week 10?
Before that, I think. It's closer to mid-season.
Well, regardless, Chase Edmonds had
week 9,
53 targets through 12 games, and many of those games were played with DeAndre Hopkins. So I'm not even factoring a bump in targets while DeAndre Hopkins is gone. He got those targets with DeAndre Hopkins there, with AJ Green, with basically a full complement of players around him. He had 53 targets in 12 games.
Okay, so let's say, all right, fine. Let's say Darrell Williams absorbs that amount of work. What we do have to account for is, yes, DeAndre Hopkins is gone for 7 games, but what this Cardinals offense does have this year that they didn't have last year in the passing game was Marquise Brown. So he'll soak up targets as well. He'll take targets away from that as well. So a 70 target season.
Yeah, but
sure.
They brought in Marquise Brown, but they took out Christian Kirk, who was heavily targeted last year.
They took out Kirk, and they took out Edmonds. So, okay, fair enough. I would say, and obviously with James Conner, outside of last year's stretch to open the season, has had his share of injury issues. Which included last year. But as it pertains to the goal line, Darrell Williams can absolutely do it. But I feel like it was more of a necessity for him in Kansas City because Clyde Edwards-Helaire proved he's a 0 at the goal line.
But James Conner's good at the goal line. But
James Conner is not a 0 at the goal line.
Yeah, but if you use him too often on the goal line, he'll get an injury and won't be available. To which point, Darrell Williams to the moon.
Sure. But until that happens, which of course we never project or predict, Connor's going to be the first man up on the goal line, whereas Clyde Edwards-Helaire should never be first man up on the goal line. He proved that literally in his first game in the NFL. Remember that against Houston, where he had 5 carries inside the 5 and never capitalized.
And we were all going gaga over the fact that he had 5 carries inside the first yard line.
Right.
But we didn't. We ignored the fact that he wasn't converting anything.
Literally failed to convert, and Andy Reid said, "Okay, that's enough of that. We're never doing that ever again." That I would say is the difference. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire himself, I think, missed. Did he? Well, how many games did he miss last year? I think he missed time.
He missed
during
a fair amount of time. But
yeah. So Williams did get an opportunity to be the guy in a slightly extended role for the Chiefs, and they actually gave him work through the passing game when
but
he was that guy.
To me, I'm not taking
that
that as a detraction from his value. It showed that he can perform as a pseudo RB1 for his team. Is he an RB1? No. Can he catch passes and work on the goal line and pick up the yardage that he needs to when he's being called upon if there's nobody else in the offense? Sure. And James Conner isn't the most durable running back in the world. And yes, we don't predict injury, but it's almost guaranteed at this point that James Conner's going to miss at least 3 games because he has in every single season of his career. And regardless of even that point, and even the DeAndre Hopkins not being there for the first 6 games, it's a timeshare at running back in Arizona. It always has been. They don't want to change that. Yes, James Conner will be the 1A now, but I brought up Chase Edmonds' stats last year to illustrate that even as the pass-catching specialist running back 1B in this offense, he still had value as the RB23 in fantasy points per game. If Darrell Williams gets the Chase Edmonds treatment, Darrell Williams can maybe not be as elusive and effective, but he can offset that with maybe a little bit extra goal line work, and he's not bad through the air. So regardless, I think based off, and it's clear if his ADP is in the 200s, you can capitalize on Darrell Williams. ADP. You can capitalize on Darrell Williams, and I think you should.
So yeah, it's a good landing spot. There will be work available, especially to open the season, and those are the types of guys that we do like to target in drafts. Give me guys we know are going to contribute right away, as opposed to we literally know DeAndre Hopkins will give you 0 through the first 6 weeks. Apples to oranges, but the argument here I'm making is go get guys who should be involved. And at an ADP of 204, again, that will climb because he now has a home. He now has a role that we can more easily chart out. So I would say that it is fair to expect that to climb. I would say at least 20 spots. Yep. But still, the 180th pick in a 12-round draft or in a 12-team draft is the 15th round, is literally the end of most standard redraft leagues. So he is free. He is free and makes a lot of sense, makes a ton of sense if you draft or end up with James Conner, because even if you reach down a little bit to go get him to secure the handcuff, you're still talking about the 13th round. So it's a very cost-effective option for you. I would just temper expectations a little bit relative to what he did in Kansas City last year, because as off of James Conner as we were last year, I think it's very fair to say definitively he's more reliable when he's in the game than Clyde Edwards-Helaire is, who was Darrell Williams' running mate last year. Yes. So again, dirt cheap. So when I give you that caveat, that devil's advocate argument, it's not like don't draft Darrell Williams, because again, you don't have to go up into the 7th round to get him, or even a Kareem Hunt situation where you have to go into the 9th round to get him. He's still dirt cheap. And again, especially so as a James Conner owner in redraft, would make a ton of sense to secure as your handcuff. I would just have a little bit of pause that he has weekly. I wouldn't go as far to say, and I don't know that you're necessarily saying this, that he has weekly standalone value when James Conner is a much more reliable player on the goal line than Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yes. I agree with that assessment.
But
the point stands, he's an incredible value based on his ADP.
He's free.
We saw, for what it's worth, we saw yesterday when we were going through the mocks that we were doing, Nick was able to snatched James Conner relatively late. People are
3rd round still.
Yeah, people are hesitant to invest in James Conner. So if you're going hero RB, zero RB, getting James Conner late-ish for where he should be drafted, and then waiting until round 13, round 14 to overdraft Darrell Williams is kind of like the cheap Zeke Pollard stack. You're not getting the same explosiveness in your backup as you're getting with Pollard by any means, but you're basically getting a whole backfield at depressed value. So that is something to think about there too if you do want to go that route. James Conner himself is technically a little bit of a value based on where he's being drafted as well. People and I think people might still overhype Keontae Ingram a little bit.
People love their rookies.
So that's it there. Darrell Williams, don't be hesitant to draft him. Alex, you're on the right track there. We're trying to get him in every single at the end of your draft in every single mock that you're doing. That's a good call if you're in here.
You're on to something there.
The next guy we're going to talk about, switching positions again. We're going to quarterback.
Let's do it. I think I know who we're talking about here.
Who's that?
I'll let you go.
All right, well, first I'm going to bring up Tyrod Taylor, so I think I'm going to completely throw you off the scent.
Okay, now I'm like, what?
Tyrod Taylor, back in 2015 and 2016, played with the team with the highest rushing totals of any team in the NFL, and also played with a team who had a top 5 defense. And this was after drafting Sammy Watkins in 2014. In 2015 and 2016, he never had more than 436 attempts through the air as a starter. And he averaged between 104 and 84 rushes on the ground as a starter. And in 2015, he finished QB7. In 2016, he finished QB16. And he was never a starter after that. But there's a player right now, quarterback, who plays for one of the highest rushing total teams in the NFL, arguably plays on a top 5 schedule adjusted defense, and we'll get to that in a second. Last year had 432 attempts as a starter. So comparable attempts through the air using his arm as a starter, but had 30 more rushes on the ground as Tyrod Taylor did through his tenure there, 139 rushes as a first-year starter, and he was, this is the giveaway here, the QB7 in 2021. You know what I'm talking about.
We're talking about Jalen Hurts.
I'm talking about Jalen Hurts.
Hey.
And Devonta Smith, if you're looking historically again, these are loose historical comps. Devonta Smith is their Sammy Watkins, because they drafted him as the young up-and-coming wide receiver the year that Jalen Hurts started at the position. But this is where the comparisons end here, because whereas Tyrod Taylor was a 3-year starter and declined after his second season, and the team failed to put any other significant pass catchers around him outside of Sammy Watkins, who ended up not being all that great in his own right. The Eagles doubled down and brought in A.J. Brown. Hurts is set up better to win in the NFL than most other quarterbacks in his division, a lot of quarterbacks in his conference, and he's set to look a lot better doing it than he did last year. And I know a lot of people, Eagles fans, general fantasy fans, are thinking this is Hurts' last season in Philly. That's general consensus.
Time. Yeah.
But he's set up to win better than a lot of other NFL teams, and that's all that a head coach and the front office care about. They're not so focused on how much better of a fantasy quarterback Jalen Hurts can be, as long as he's bringing you wins. And look at this schedule. Lions, Vikings, Commanders, Jaguars, Cardinals, Cowboys, Steelers, Texans, Commanders, Colts, Packers, Titans, Giants, Bears, Cowboys, Saints, Giants.
It's a great start to the season. Like, they have a good chance to get into to build early momentum this year.
And even if you split with the Cowboys, I would bet that you'll beat the Giants in both times you play them. I would bet that you'd beat the Commanders both times that you play them. Carson Wentz revenge game. I bet that you beat the Bears. And I'm looking at this schedule and thinking conservatively, you guys are going to win 10 games and lose 7, which is going to be 1 game better than you did in 2020. Jalen Hurts will look better doing it. And there's no guarantee that Jalen Hurts is going to be out in 2022. It's not a guarantee. People are thinking that it is a guarantee that Jalen Hurts isn't going to be with the Eagles next season. All it takes is for the win column to look a little bit better for the Eagles and him to connect on a few long bombs to A.J. Brown for him to be re-upped for another season. And I don't think people are thinking about that in terms of just this year, that he could look a lot better just this season, and that he could end up being their long-term or a little bit more than a 1-year, 2-year starter at least. What's his ADP?
65.
65 for the...
For Underdog Fantasy. So he is the QB6 being drafted on the board. He's officially going ahead of Joe Burrow. He's only a few spots lower than a guy that we've been pumping up this offseason, Kyler Murray. So I would say that, and this may have been especially so after the A.J. Brown trade, hardcore drafters are giving him love for this year. They absolutely are.
They were a year too late. They were a year later than Nick was.
This channel was not too late on Jalen Hurts. Let the record show.
You specifically were not.
I pumped him up pretty good.
I can't take any credit for that, so that was all you.
I pumped him up pretty good. Fun little tidbit that I saw on Twitter today. This is from Twitter user Alex Mateo for copyright purposes. This is not my stat. This is something that he posted on Twitter. On top of everything you just mentioned, QB6 finished last year, improvement in the weapons.
My bad, I said 7. My
yeah,
fault.
QB6 finished last year, improvement in the passing game as far as A.J. Brown, and has tier 1 rushing upside with the likes of Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray. He also had 8 passing touchdowns called back last year. So everybody wants to talk about how he only threw 16 touchdowns. He actually threw, you could give him over 20 scores last year that were called back on, let's say, holding penalties or some type of offensive foul. Scores that he got into the end zone, passes that he got into the end zone that were called back through no fault of his own. That also, let's just say, again, I'm reading from Alex's tweet, let's just say that also adds 200 or so passing yards to his totals. Now we're talking about a top 5 finish at the position.
It's not out of the realm of possibility, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that he is more of a long-term starter for the Eagles than people are thinking, and I just don't think people are talking about that possibility right now.
Yeah, so we're talking about a 3,000 plus yard passing season, maybe close to 3,500 yards, and we're approaching about 25 passing touchdowns to single-digit interceptions on top of what he provides in the rushing department, which is again tier 1 rushing upside with the likes of Allen. Chance to duplicate those numbers. Does he duplicate the touchdown numbers again? That's hard to predict and project because touchdowns are high variance, and with Miles Sanders scoring 0 last year, it's to be fair, there might be a little bit of course correction there. Maybe Hurts scores 4 rushing touchdowns or 5 rushing touchdowns as opposed to 7 or 8. But the point stands. The tier 1 rushing upside is there. I would be willing to argue that the Eagles have a top 2 or 3 offensive line in the NFL. That's how good they are. Left guard is a little bit of a question mark, but they've got all pro talent at the tackle spots and center. This is an offense that is set up for... It's fair to question the wide receivers next year. It's fair to question. It's fair to have concerns about A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith from a usage standpoint because they actually had very little vacated targets available for wide receivers, and then they added A.J. Brown.
Right.
So is there a little bit of concern for the wide receivers? Sure, that's fair. But for Hurts himself, absolutely not. I think the ADP of 65 is more than fair. I think that's a perfectly good spot to target him. I don't think that's him being overdrafted. Yes, he's a little bit more expensive than he was last year, but it hasn't gone so off the deep end that he's overvalued. I think that 65 ADP is fine. He's a little bit cheaper than Kyler Murray if you do decide to try to wait a little bit. And stacks for Hurts and his weapons are relatively easy to build. I'll include Dallas Goedert in there as well, who's got an ADP of, let me double check this just to be correct, on Underdog Fantasy, which I consider to be the most accurate as far as the hardcore drafters go in the offseason. Dallas Goedert's got an ADP of about 93.6, so about 94, and he is the tight end 8 off the board. Devontae Smith is also cheaper than Jalen Hurts by about 10 spots. So if you get a little lucky, even in 12-team drafts, you can stack Hurts with his weapons, with Devontae Smith. And I'll even include Miles Sanders in there, who's got an ADP of 78, which when you have a rushing offense and a running quarterback, I'm sorry, I'll vouch for this. The rushing quarterback and the starting running back is a stack.
Yeah.
That's a stack.
Yeah.
That is 100% a stack.
What we were just talking about with the Arizona Cardinals. Imagine you had Kyler Murray on a team. You had James Conner and Darrell Williams on. Stack.
That's a stack. Because if they're running shotgun on the goal line and it's a RPO, it's either going to be going to Conner or it's a keeper for Murray. It's either going to go to Sanders or it's a keeper for Hurts. Same logic applies here. These are easy stacks to build for the Eagles. And yes, maybe it's a little volatile to go all in on the Eagles' passing attack from a stack perspective. If Hurts is at the core of it, you'll be just fine. And your quarterback will be a layup for the entire season. I like him over Joe Burrow from a fantasy perspective this year. I like him over Tom Brady, who's going a little cheaper. I like him over Russell Wilson, who's even a little cheaper than that. I think Hurts from a fantasy perspective stays rock solid this year. So yeah, I agree. I'm on board.
And if you want to take a look at a little bit of a more, I want to say the regular fantasy players, not the diehards, because I think that's what this ADP in fantasy footballcalculator.com is representing. It's not the diehards and the people that are paying attention in the offseason like it is the regular season. His ADP on Fantasy Football Calculator is 86 and can be had at the 7-11.
Oof.
So if you're not drafting with these diehards like you are on Underdog, if you're drafting in some of these mocks, if you have a slightly earlier draft time than people typically see, you can capitalize on the relatively low ADP of 86, if this is to be believed, by the non-diehard fantasy owners. You can capitalize on that ADP. But regardless, I really like Jalen Hurts this year. And again, a testament to what a rushing quarterback can give you. Tyrod Taylor, who is not good by any means, finished QB7 in 2015.
Just on the back of running the ball.
On the back of 104 rushes as a starter. And Jalen Hurts last season had 139 in one more game. So he was rushing more than Tyrod Taylor was rushing when he finished QB7. So, I mean, all it takes is a couple more things for him to go his way. And Jalen Hurts is a top 5 quarterback.
Certainly vouches for things going his way, at least as far as off-season victories. In standard 4-point passing touchdown leagues, I fully expect a 350-point fantasy season from Hurts this year.
Boom.
What's going on, Slim?
And Iron, let's get to these chats before we go into the next player. Is A.J. Brown and Gibson for Justin Jefferson a realistic offer?
Yeah, it's realistic. It's not unfair because yes, J.J. is an elite dynasty asset, but we talk about AJ Brown in the realm below, in the tier below, and then Gibson is, yes, for all of the downside for him right now, he's still, as of today, a starting running back. It's a fair offer. Will the guy say yes? That's a different question. But I think it's fair.
Yeah, I like that. Try it out. Fair. See how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. If the Justin Jefferson owner is like offended by that offer, then, you know, don't cave. Just, it's like, all right, it's fair from how I view it, because it's still a very good young wide receiver and a proven good young running back who had an RB1 finish last year despite multiple injuries. Like, it's a good offer. Yeah.
And honestly, if you have to throw a second on top of that or something like that to get it done, I wouldn't feel bad doing that to get a guy like Justin Jefferson on my squad.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we're very high on Jefferson for this season in particular.
And Slim, you already know about that hashtag. What's going on, Rojo?
Yes, sir. What's going on, Rojo? Hey, congrats to your daughter.
Yeah, man. Congratulations. That's awesome. Yeah.
She's big time first grade now.
And yo, don't worry about saying sorry you're late, bro.
Yeah, you have your. That's the priority.
Yeah, and it would be great to have Chase and Justin Jefferson in any league, bro. Like, if you can make that happen, hats off. But yo, Slim acquired Saquon, and I'm gonna guess that's Wandale.
Wandale, yeah. He threw this in the Discord the other day.
All right, for Gibson, Jacobs, and a 23 second.
I think you won.
Yeah, I think that's a win.
I think you won. Here's the thing. So I like Gibson. I like Jacobs. We like 2023 picks. Saquon, if healthy, is a league winner, is a difference maker. I think a healthy Saquon, you can't get him for what you got him. And you add a 2024 first on top of that. Like, it looks pretty fair on paper, but Saquon has league-winning capability when healthy, and it looked like he was well on his way to doing that again last year prior to the Week 5 ankle injury. Because Weeks 3 and 4, if you remember, Week 3 and Week 4 last year, Saquon looked like Saquon. It looked like it was like, okay, he's Weeks 1 and 2, we're getting the feet wet, right? We're getting back on the field. We're getting back into the swing of things. This team still stinks, but I'm still Saquon. That's what it looked like Week 3 and 4. Looked like he was rounding back into form. Unfortunately, picked up another ankle injury Week 5. It messed up the rest of the season, even though he did end up continuing to play through it. This offense is better now. They addressed offensive line. Brian Daboll was the mastermind behind one of the best ascensions of offense in the Buffalo Bills that we've seen in recent memory. Not worried. I'm not, this isn't a Daniel Jones, Josh Allen conversation. This is just, this offense should be better with Brian Daboll, and Saquon is going to be the engine that makes it go. Also adding a first round pick on top of it. Good move. I like it. I mean, I think I remember I supported it when you posted it, Slim. I support it now.
And Gibson and Jacobs, we're looking at them like Jacobs. The one knock I would say on him over the last few seasons is we've seen what he really could be if they really opened it up for him, but they always seem to hesitant to involve him in all phases of the game. Gibson to a much more further extent, even we've fallen in love with what he can theoretically do if given the whole range of the backfield. But the team insists on having J.K. Dobbins or J.D. McKissick and now Brian Robinson and Jarrett Patterson involved. To a lesser extent, same thing for Jacobs, but not quite as much. Jacobs has still at least been perennial low-end wide running back 1. High-end running back 2. Saquon, there are no concerns over whether or not he is going to get full run, full range of work from the running back position. He's going to catch passes. He's going to run the ball. He's going to be out there in goal line situations. He's going to be out there in the red zone. He's going to be heavily utilized in the red zone. He's going to be utilized everywhere. You never have to worry about the situational aspects of the running back position with Saquon like you will with Gibson and Jacobs to a certain extent. And it's and yeah, people are thinking at Saquon like he's Zeke's age, and he's not. He's like 25 right now, isn't he?
It's not the age that I'm concerned about with Zeke. It's the overall.
Well, now
usage.
People are thinking about Saquon.
Saquon's 25.
I'm not.
Right.
We're not talking about Zeke here. I was just saying there's a depressed value for Zeke. There's a depressed value for Saquon because they've both been in the league for a few years.
Yeah, but
basically
Saquon
it's a win.
All
I'm saying is it's a win for you there. And
Saquon doesn't have the wear and tear.
Yeah, I wasn't comparing Saquon and Zeke. I was saying there's depressed value in the fantasy community for both right now.
Okay, yeah.
And we both like Wandale a lot.
Zeke's is more warranted. Saquon's is just because of people are concerned of injuries. But yeah, if he's healthy, yeah, like you said, this ain't a committee. He's not splitting work with Matt Breida. Saquon is a league winner and a game changer if healthy. You gave up some good depth. I would say it's a fair. Right now today, it looks like a pretty fair trade, but Saquon is a game changer in the way that those two guys haven't quite proven to be. And you add a first-round pick on top of it. And I haven't even talked about Wandale.
Look, you got the best player right now.
Got the best player in the deal.
And you got the best assets for the future because Wandale shouldn't depreciate like a running back will.
No,
and you have a 24 first, which is better than a 23 second. We all love the 23 class, but let's be real. You got the best short-term assets and the best long-term assets out of this deal, so it's a win. And as far as A.J. Brown and a 23 second for Hollywood Brown and Dawson Knox, it's not quite the slam dunk for me that the other trade is, but it's still a definite upgrade at wide receiver. And if you have the
best player,
if you have the tight ends to
got Irvin commit, so that's good.
Yeah. If you have the tight ends like you do to keep it even, you're fine. You're fine. And technically, you can use that 23 second to diversify your team in other ways if you need help at running back or another wide receiver. So yeah, I would say both of those trades.
I would say it's more even. I would say it's more fair because I would rather have AJ than Hollywood. And I guess to be completely fair, I think I would rather have Knox than a 2023 second. But it all evens out. You got the best player in the deal and a draft pick. Meanwhile, yes, you lose Knox, but you have more than viable pieces to replace him. We feel good about Irv Smith. I'll say it again. Like anytime the Vikings come up, I am a proponent of the Vikings passing offense this year. That includes Irv Smith. I think Irv's going to do well. So you're fine. And Komet, I mean, hell, who else are the Bears going to throw to other than Darnell Mooney?
Velus Jones.
Velus.
Yo, I love Knox. Bills fan, I love Knox. But you have to remember, Knox finished tight end 6 on the back of 9 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He was not a yardage monster. He's not one of these tight ends that's getting 800, 900, 1,000 yards through the air. He'll get you 500 to 600 and a large share of touchdowns. And both Irv Smith and Cole Kmet can do that. They can. Do we like the offense that Knox plays in better? Yes. Does he have slightly more athletic upside than both of those other tight ends? Yes. But Irv Smith and Cole Kmet can do what Knox has done as a mid-tier tight end one. Knox has not ascended to the point where it's going to be rough to see Irv Smith and Cole Kmet do what he can do on for your fantasy team. So yeah, I like both of those trades. So good job, man.
Yep.
And Rojo, you just missed us doing a deep dive on Darrell Williams. We will cut this live stream up so you can get the 15-minute conversation that we talked about, where we talked about Darrell Williams. If you don't want to rewind this stream after we're all done, you can do that too. But we did do a deep dive on Darrell Williams. We both love him at his ADP. Keontae Ingram stock down. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's stock down. It's just he's down a peg on the depth chart now. So by default, you have to knock him down a peg. And because I still have to believe right now today, with the way most teams and coaches operate, Eno Benjamin is ahead of Keontae Ingram on the depth chart.
Yes.
So even if anything happens to Connor, Darrell Williams ascends to that top spot. I think that the complimentary back, and obviously we'll see how training camp plays out. It's not like rookies can't win, can't take jobs from other players. It's happened plenty of times, but I have to believe that at least today, right now, the change of pace alternative option is Eno.
I would think so too.
For now, anyway. But yeah, I mean, yeah, stock down. Darrell Williams is going to absorb backup duties. Keontae is there this year to grow and develop and learn.
And yeah, thanks, Ro. If you can wait, we will be cutting that up for you. But regardless, if you want to rewatch the stream, that's cool too.
We'll cut it up.
We did a little bit of a deep dive on Darrell Williams. We did a little bit of a deep dive on Rashad Bateman,
Mike Williams, Jalen Hurts.
Williams, and you just came in at the tail end of the Jalen Hurts one. So, Yep.
Yeah, we can throw those out.
And Slim says, snag Khalil Herbert for Dynasty. Demont could be on his way out. Could be.
Was there
There were rumblings that
little clip?
Huh?
Was there any type of like news clip or something?
Yeah, there were rumblings that that we're not worried about him for this year, but possibly David Montgomery could be on the outs in Chicago once his contract comes up for renewal.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can take that chance because he shouldn't really cost you all that much in Dynasty.
Slim says Montgomery's on his last year of his deal, so yeah.
So he could be out as soon as next year. I mean, the thing is, we have to remember, we have to keep in mind, next year is a very expected strong running back class. So the Bears could absolutely be in on that, depending on draft capital and their situation. If they do, in fact, let Montgomery walk, if they're in a position to go get a running back next year. And again, we expect it to run 6-7 deep at the position. And that's just guys who we expect to take over as starters, either, if not 2023, by 2024. So Khalil Herbert probably remains in his role regardless of what happens to Montgomery. That doesn't mean he doesn't have value, but don't break the bank for what we hope happens in the future as far as like an increase in work with a guy like that.
Yeah, like I learned my lesson this offseason going out and getting Keyshawn Vaughn because he was, at that point in time in the offseason, the only back on the roster. Yeah. You got to watch out for those type of knee-jerk reactions to how a depth chart immediately looks or might project to look in the future. You can't be making large trades for depth pieces on rough predictions based off of depth charts you see online. It's
not that we're accusing you of potentially.
No, I did that. So I'm cautioning anybody to go out and overpay to do the same thing. Because I overpaid for Keyshawn Vaughn when he was the only running back on that Tampa Bay depth chart. So you gotta. I'm still learning fantasy just like y'all, and that's something that I picked up on this past offseason, was maybe not knee-jerk react to what a depth chart looks like or is projected to look like a year out. But definitely keep that in mind and prepare.
explore those avenues. Yeah.
If you can get him on the cheap, then go for it. But
things change like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't underestimate the second round of free agency, because you'll end up getting burned overdrafting Keontae Ingram, and then Darrell Williams goes to the Cardinals, and then you'll
get Darrell Williams.
Yeah. All right, last question before we get back into this list I have here. Better shot to contribute, Snoop Connor, and I'll leave this to you to talk about Snoop, or Brian Robinson.
I think the answer is Brian Robinson, to be honest. There was a quote that came, I think it was Ron Rivera, about how, I'm paraphrasing here. I don't remember all of the specifics of the quote, but Washington wants to run the ball this year. And I think that's pretty simple. Carson Wentz stinks, and they're going to find it out sooner or later. Like, yes, Carson Wentz has a big arm. Carson Wentz can throw the deep ball. Accurately, that's a different question. There's no questioning Wentz has raw talent. He does. He can throw the ball deep. He's got a big arm. That's exciting and enticing for coaches and teams. That's where my compliments end for him. Eventually, Wentz's warts show themselves. And it's like, okay, now we want to do what we can to take the ball out of his hands and not necessarily put it in his hands. I think it's going to be a lot of ground and pound in Washington this year. So I expect Antonio Gibson to continue to lead the way and lead the charge. He is the most talented player and most overall complete player in that backfield. Will he cede more work this year? I think that's also fair. Again, I think Washington is going to run the ball as much as they can. They might try to throw the ball to start the season at a high rate with a guy like Wentz. But again, Wentz's warts will eventually show themselves. I think Washington will be a ground and pound team this year. Therefore, I think Brian Robinson, do I expect him to be like this very consistent change of pace option? And it's like, oh my God, this guy is a must roster even in 10 shallow redraft leagues. I won't go that far yet. But I think he has a slightly better chance to contribute than Snoop Connor. I think Snoop has a chance. Absolutely. The vibes are, obviously, again, we can take all of these offseason headlines with a grain of salt, but the Jaguars seem to be a little more optimistic than maybe previously thought about the recovery of James Robinson. Will he be ready week 1? I wouldn't bet on that. Will he be able to contribute this year? Looks like it might be a little more likely than not. And for what it's worth, Travis Etienne, the vibes seem to be turning around heavily and quickly for him right now. The reports are that he has bulked up in anticipation of carrying a heavy workload, not just catching the ball, but being their workhorse out of the backfield for however long he needs to be until James Robinson can come back and contribute in that regard. Does Snoop Connor today, right now, look like he has a better chance to get carries week 1 than Brian Robinson? Sure, because I don't expect James Robinson to be healthy week 1, whereas Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissic will be for Washington. But over the course of the season, let's assume James Robinson is able to get back a little sooner than maybe we originally anticipated. I think that lends maybe a little bit more in Brian Robinson's favor to have a chance to contribute over the course of the season. We're talking about RB 4s and 5s here. At the end of the day, but I'll give a slight nod to Robinson. Snoop for the beginning of the season, Robinson maybe overall.
I think you also just have to look at the talent that these two bring to the table. Brian Robinson was a guy that we were talking about in February, March, April.
Yeah, Snoop wasn't.
I didn't hear not one person mention Snoop Connor. Which isn't to say Snoop Connor can't be something in the NFL, but he didn't have that profile according to the draft community, the fantasy community, the draft community, and even the NFL community prior to the NFL draft actually happening. We can fall in love with, again, the projected depth charts based on what we're projecting it to look like 5-6 months from now. But Brian Robinson, from a talent perspective, is a much better running back than Snoop Connor is on paper as prospects before we've seen them play it down in the league. Brian Robinson has a 1,300-yard season in college, and I believe it was at Alabama. So
it was at Bama.
And Snoop Connor, he played at Ole Miss, topped out at 647 yards in 13 games. We're talking about very different types of running backs here. Coming out, Brian Robinson was probably around our running back 8 to 10 in this class.
I was gonna say 7 or 8, maybe
7, 8, 9, 10, something around there. Snoop Connor wasn't even on that list.
Connor wasn't on the list, no.
So that's something you also have to take into account. It's Brian Robinson.
I understand, Slim. Ron Rivera, you can't trust what he says. There's a lot of coaches that, it's coach speak. You can't trust what they say. I don't have a hard time believing that Washington is going to rely a good bit on their run game this year.
And what I know Ron Rivera said last year that he was going to use Gibson like CMC. And maybe that thought process kind of bit him in the, it kind of...
It could have derailed a little bit when he picked up the shin injury.
Right. They might have... The thought process might be we want to use him like
Scaled
a workhorse. Then he picked up an injury, and it became clear to them that they cannot use him like a bona fide workhorse like CMC. And now this year they're talking about thunder and lightning backfields like D'Angelo Williams, Jonathan Stewart, and using them in that manner to keep them both fresh and healthy. Because again, the number one goal of these head coaches is to win games. It's not to make fantasy players get more points. I'm not going to say you can't trust Ron Rivera, especially when he's talking about how he's going to scale back and use a running back by committee. I think you need to pay attention to that. I think you need to take what a coach is saying with a grain of salt, but when a coach is with a long history of running with a committee says specifically, I want to go back to that way of thinking after 1 year after saying he was going to use his running back one like a true bona fide running back one in the league, I think you need to pay attention to that. Coach speak is coach speak. When Frank Reich says, if I was playing fantasy, I'd be drafting Nyheim Hines, grain of salt with that.
Yeah.
But with this, I think it's a little bit more actionable. I think you really do have to pay attention to Ron Rivera when he says he wants to go back to a D'Angelo Williams, a Jonathan Stewart type split with his current backfield, especially when they draft a Brian Robinson. So, and they make a point to re-sign a J.D. McKissick. So I think you do have to listen to Ron Rivera here to a certain extent. But yeah, for me, it's B-Rob, and it's not close. All right. So we talked about earlier, and I said we were going to come back to it.
Yeah.
Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy.
One or two more guys, or are these the two guys? Okay.
Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. When we were talking about Rashad Bateman, both of them were mentioned as guys that are going ahead of Rashad Bateman.
Yes, both going ahead.
What are their ADPs right now?
I'm looking right now.
Because I dug into the historical data for Russell Wilson wide receivers, and really before 2019 when DK Metcalf was drafted, he had made a living making beta wide receivers alpha wide receivers.
Making them better.
He made Doug Baldwin wide receiver 7 in 2015, 10 in 2016, 14 in 2017. He made Tyler Lockett wide receiver 11 in 2018 and Doug Baldwin wide receiver 48 in 2018. But in 2019, once DK Metcalf got there, and he finally got really his first bona fide wide receiver one in his offense, the last 2 seasons, he supported, at worst, 2 top 13 wide receivers. In 2020, DK Metcalf was wide receiver 5, and Tyler Lockett was wide receiver 11. And in 2021, Tyler Lockett was wide receiver 11, and DK Metcalf was wide receiver 13 in a down year where everybody was crapping on him after week 8.
Russ got hurt, missed time. Like, the Seahawks season went in the toilet last year. That affects individual production.
Yeah, but you're lost in that is the fact that over the last 2 seasons, once Russell Wilson finally got a bona fide wide receiver 1, he supported 2 top 13 wide receivers in back-to-back seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that should be lost on the fantasy community here. So I know that Jerry Jeudy and Sutton have ADPs, you're saying, higher than Rashad Bateman.
Jerry Jeudy's ADP is 48.4. Cortland Sutton's is 51.2. So you have to draft them. Can I do math? 4th round. You gotta draft them both in the 4th round. Say middle of the 4th round to the end of the 4th round is where you have to go if you want one of the Broncos wide receivers.
And I know they have more of a supporting cast than the top 2 wide receivers ever had in Seattle, but it also should be a much heavier passing attack, more than the run 3 times and then run twice and then throw it on 3rd down Seahawks over the last few seasons.
No, the offensive coordinator or the head coach is Nathaniel Hackett. He's the Packers offensive coordinator.
Right. So Russ is going to throw more.
They're going to throw the ball more.
So I'm not shying away from Cortland Sutton specifically, and Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. Again, 2020, DK Metcalf, wide receiver 5. Cortland Sutton should be his new DK Metcalf. Tyler Lockett, wide receiver 11. Jerry Jeudy, or maybe KJ Hamler or something like that, should be his wide receiver 11. 2021, Tyler Lockett, wide receiver 11. DK Metcalf, wide receiver 13. I know that he's going to have to build up rapport with these new wide receivers, but still, the point stands. Russell Wilson will make these 2 wide receivers high-end fantasy wide receivers. Are their ADPs warranted to you with that information in mind?
It's a good tidbit to point out because, again, I think people are continuing to proceed with caution with these guys based off of their past couple of years, when they had abysmal quarterback play and both at some point or other sustained injuries that held them out for multiple weeks, if not longer. Judy's going off the board as the wide receiver 22, Sutton as the wide receiver 24. So literally low-end wide receiver 2s for both of them. Knowing what we know about what we have seen from Russ as far as supporting multiple high-end options at the position, I think it is fair to say that maybe both of them are being a little undervalued from that perspective. However, I'm fine with them. I'm fine with those ADPs simply from the standpoint that we just quite haven't seen it yet. Yes, we have seen it from Sutton. Sutton did it a couple of years ago. Proved that he is he can be a high-end option for fantasy purposes. We're a couple years removed from that. But again, one of those years was a torn ACL. The other was he was catching passes from Drew Lock. Jerry Jeudy was forced into a wide receiver 1 role as a rookie. Didn't quite get it done from a production standpoint, but also never clicked or connected with Drew Lock. And then again, last year, suffered a high ankle sprain week 1. That's a type of injury that can derail your entire season. And for Jeudy, for the most part, it did derail his season last year. He had a bad season. He didn't score any touchdowns. He had fewer than 500 yards receiving. However, his rookie year was a little bit more promising, despite the fact that it feels like, 1, ages ago, and 2, it feels like it wasn't even that good. 113 targets, 52 catches, 856 yards, 3 touchdowns. For a rookie with no expectations after what happened to Sutton and catching passes from Drew Lock, it's pretty damn good to come away with 132 fantasy points scored in half PPR. It's not bad. 0 touchdowns last year. that's going up with Russell Wilson. So Jerry Jeudy in the middle of the 4th round, I feel pretty good about that. Cortland Sutton, again, low-end wide receiver 2. You're not going to end up with both of these guys. I would say that's also fair. I wouldn't call them screaming buys, screaming values, just looking at the names going ahead of them. Maybe I say they go, these guys should go ahead of George Kittle, sure. They're in the Terry McLaurin, Amari Cooper, DK Metcalf tier. Okay, fine. After that, I have a hard time moving them too much higher. So I think they're properly placed as far as ADP, but could they easily exceed those expectations, knowing what we know about what Russ can do to support his top weapons? Sure. I mean, DJ Moore is going 10 spots ahead of them. Deontay Johnson is going 10 spots ahead of them.
I'd rather wait and grab Sutton.
Or even Jeudy.
Or
Ezekiel Elliott is going ahead
of
of them. Which at this point feels like I wouldn't say that that's a clear-cut sell. Breece Hall is going ahead of them. I'm fine with that. David Montgomery is going ahead of them. I'm fine with that. I'll even say, Darren Waller is going ahead of them. I'm fine with that. I think I'd rather take a shot on a difference maker at tight end his ADP has fallen relative to last year, but now he's healthy. I'm fine with that. So there's a little bit of a mixed bag here. I think this is a good representation, this range of like 35 to 50 ADP. It's more volatile than drafters want to give it credit for. Take shots on guys who you believe in their upside. I think it's fair to say Jeudy and Sutton fit that mold, fit that argument.
And it's strange to me that Judy's ADP is so much higher than Sutton's.
Not so much. It's about 3 spots higher, but
okay.
I think it's fair to say Jeudy, we're comparing apples to oranges here, but I would say Sutton is more of the Metcalf, whereas Jeudy is more of the Lockett. And yes, Russ supported both of them being great, DK being the high-end wide receiver 1, but Lockett, there was a little bit more year-over-year consistency.
He was the wide receiver 11 in back-to-back seasons. DK had wide receiver 5 to wide receiver 13. So there might be a little bit more variance year-to-year in a Sutton's usage. But if Jeudy takes over that Lockett role, I mean, a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2 perennially is... I'm not going to say lock it in, but about as much as you can lock something like that in, it's what I would be projecting.
Yeah.
All right, last one here. And this one will be quick.
Okay.
Yesterday, in the mocks that we did with the members-only squad, I took Rob Gronkowski with my last pick.
Okay.
He finished tight end 8 despite missing 6 games and was the tight end 3 in points per game last year. Now, no Godwin for at least the first probably 6 games, if not a little more. No Antonio Brown whatsoever. We're looking at a Mike Evans and Russell Gage wide receiver core target competition-wise for the first 6 games. I mean, people are looking at 2021 Andrews like, oh man, I'm gonna go back to that well and probably draft him maybe a little bit too high. I mean, you can literally wait if you don't want to draft Mark Andrews in round 2 or 3. You can literally wait another 14 rounds and get last year's tight end 3. What's his ADP in Underdog?
Too low.
Because I know a lot of this has to do with he's not signed to the team yet. There's no guarantee. He's playing, man. Tom Brady would not come back from retirement to play with Mike Evans and Russell Gage and a bunch of rookies.
His ADP is 128.4, so you can...
There you go.
128 in a 12-team draft, you can comfortably have him in the 11th round.
There you go. All right, so he might not be 12 rounds after where you would draft Mark Andrews, but the point stands. Gronk is a screaming value right now.
That's a screaming buy.
We all like the Goddards and the Knoxes who are being drafted around the 10th round right now, but you could argue that those guys don't have tight end 3 upside. You could argue that. I would argue that.
Yeah.
In their current offenses where they stand right now, those guys probably don't have top 3 upside at the tight end position. Gronk finished tight end 3 in points per game last year, tight end 8 despite missing 6 games. No Godwin, no Antonio Brown this year. Once Gronk gets drafted or gets signed by the comes back from retirement.
Signs.
His ADP is going to go up. His ADP
20,
is still going to be too low even when it goes
25,
up.
30 spots,
His
probably.
ADP is still going to be too low once it goes up.
Yeah, this is simple for me. Who'd they draft? Cade Otton?
Cade Otton, and they brought in another guy in like the 6th or 7th round.
All right, I don't mean any disrespect to Cade Otton, but the Bucs did not address tight end in free agency or in the offseason in general.
They let go of O.J. Howard.
Yeah, they let O.J. Howard walk. And they didn't draft a tight end until the 5th round, who is at best a developmental prospect. This is a team with Super Bowl aspirations because Tom Brady's the quarterback. They would have brought somebody in if Gronk was actually not coming back to play. He's just going through the motions of the offseason. He doesn't want to play. He doesn't want to report to training camp because, let's be real, Gronk doesn't need training camp. He probably just needs like 10 days to get his body ready for the NFL.
Yeah, he himself said 2 weeks because he's still working out 4 to 5 days a week.
Yeah, so he's coming back. He's going to play. And it's the most obvious unknown, if you want to call it that, as far as guys who are still available on the free agent market. Gronk will re-sign with the Bucs for another year. He will play with Tom Brady, and yes, he will have top 5 points per game upside at the position. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm almost at the point where it's like, yo, punt tight end completely.
Punt and
aim
unless
for Gronk and Tunyon. Literally.
If Kelsey falls in the 2nd, if Mark Andrews falls late 2nd, okay, fine. Other than that, pass on everybody else. Just take Gronk in the 11th round, even if you don't end up with Brady as your quarterback. Makes too much sense. Yeah, I agree. I don't have much else to add.
Yeah, I mean, that one's just kind of a slam dunk no-brainer. I just saw that yesterday in mocks, albeit it was I believe this was when we were doing a 10-team. He could have been had with the last pick in a 10-team. And a 12-team, maybe he gets picked up. I mean, there's also a chance that until he gets signed by Tampa Bay, he doesn't get picked up. I heard somebody, I was listening to another fantasy pod the other day, and somebody was saying they picked him up with their last pick because they had punted tight end. So in best balls in underdog, you can get him with your last pick because this person was talking about drafting him in an underdog league. So people are forgetting about Rob Gronkowski. Even if they're not forgetting about Rob Gronkowski, they're writing him off until he signs on the dotted line because fantasy owners are scared of the unknown. When you're putting down money on something, you usually want the surest thing imaginable. Gronk is technically an unknown right now because he's not signed. He's gonna sign there, and he will be he's a Hall of Fame, one of the best, if not the best, tight end that has ever played the position up to this point, and he just continues to produce when on the field. Very little target competition. And your Cade Otton point stands. Did we mention? We talk about the tight end position a lot because of my RAS breakdowns and all that. Did I mention Cade Otton once to you? I didn't know his name, dude. I didn't know his name. Now,
he might have come up once.
Last year, I'm cherry picking a little bit, but last year I had heard about obviously Kyle Pitts and Pat Freiermuth, but I had heard about Tommy Tremble. I had heard about Brevin Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
There's a group of tight ends though that got drafted with relatively high draft capital that I had never heard of before, and guess what they all did in their first year in the league? Nothing. Trey McKitty didn't do anything. 4th round pick. Kylan Granson didn't do anything. They went out and drafted 2 guys who should overtake him in the depth chart next year, the year following, and Jelani Woods, and there was one other guy there that they drafted who is athletic as well. Point being, I've keep my ear to the streets with respect to these incoming tight end rookies.
Tight end prospects.
And I'd never heard of Cade Otton before. Ever. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that he could contribute, but I would put money on him not contributing his first year at all.
Oh, Bellinger.
I would put money on him being like a Trey McKitty, and he's a hopeful even after year 1, year 2.
It's a developmental prospect. Yeah,
right.
They're just, but like on a team with Super Bowl aspirations. So, I mean.
And yeah, Rojo, I like Bellinger a lot this year. I actually, when I was putting this list together, I was trying to shoehorn being able to talk about Daniel Bellinger. And
not for 2022.
I wasn't going to put him into this conversation once I took a look at things. And for the last tight end that I like, it was between, should I talk about Gronk or should I talk about Logan Thomas? And I decided to talk about Gronk. But
Gronk is much more of a screaming buy. Logan Thomas's ADP is dirt cheap for what it's worth, but the points per game edge is easy. It goes to Gronk.
Yeah, and it's not so much of a slam dunk when digging into the numbers, because over the last few seasons, Carson Wentz has not supported a tight end. 1 or 2.
Not since Zach Ertz back.
No, not since 2019. From 2016 to 2019, he did. From 2018 and 2019, he supported 2 top 20 options. But yeah, since 2019, he has basically forgotten the tight end position. So Logan Thomas, after digging into the numbers, I don't know if I'm super high on him. There are many tight ends I would rather have, like Cole Kmet and Irv Smith.
Yeah, there you go.
Who Slim has. So
good job, Slim.
Yeah, I think Logan might start on the pup. I
didn't even see that.
And yeah, if you can throw him into your IR spot, then it saves it. It's picking up another. It's basically adding another roster spot to your starting lineup week 1. But yeah, I'm not sure if I'm tying my wagon to Logan Thomas in 2022.
I mean, he's free relative to ADP. I would even have to look it up. It's cheap, but there's a reason for that.
Yeah, and when Carson Wentz had top 6 tight ends in 4 straight seasons with Zach Ertz, his wide receivers were Alshon Jeffrey and Nelson Aguilar. And I think that Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Curtis Samuel are a better wide receiver core than what he was working with in Philly. So he will probably not have to rely on tight end as much, even though Ron Rivera loves tight end and scheming for tight end like he did with Greg Olsen. I don't know if Logan Thomas will ever repeat being a top 4, top 5 option. I think that might have just been a 1-season flash in the pan, considering their quarterback situation this year.
Thomas's ADP is 182. So
rather have Gronk.
Yeah, more
not
expensive,
even close.
But yeah,
I would rather just invest up in Gronk then. Not even close. But if you can get him for free and throw him into your IR spot, Rojo, that's not a bad bet. Yeah, he probably won't even get drafted in a lot of leagues, so he will probably be free. He will be an afterthought, and he's technically a high upside afterthought, but he does come with some warts, namely his quarterback and health to a certain extent. But that's all the players that I had listed. Again, for those that came in late, we started with Rashad Bateman, talked about Mike Williams, talked about Darrell Williams, talked about Jalen Hurts, talked about Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, and talked about Rob Gronkowski here at the end. I will cut these up for you so that you can get these in 15-minute little videos for you guys. It's probably not going to be tonight. We're both busy over the next few days, but by the beginning of next week, they will be out for sure. And let's see here. Slim, with everybody going for Mike Pittman, can we talk about Mac Daddy? Matt Ryan has produced a top 6 tight end before.
We're talking about Mo Alley Cox? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he should be a top 12 option.
Yeah,
this year.
He should be. I think he's top 10. Mo Alley Cox, I think, is a fantastic
You don't think
late
Alec
round
Pierce
target.
Affects that now to a certain extent? Because when we were projecting top 10, it was literally Michael Pittman and nobody else?
No.
Okay.
I don't think that changes things because, again, Matt Ryan has the tight end has been a big focal point of Matt Ryan-led offenses, and that's when he had Julio and Calvin Ridley. Like, he turned Hayden Hurst and Austin Hooper into tight end ones for those seasons. Mo Alley Cox can do that if those guys can. Plus, he's like 7'8". He's just huge.
Yo, Keontae was cut? What?
That's got to be...
T. Williams was cut? What are you... Huh? Huh?
Eh.
All right, we're going to have to confirm that.
Nah, they just signed him 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, why would they do that? But yeah, we both love Mo Alley Cox. We got a video on this channel talking about how Mo Alley Cox is a tight end 1 this season with Matt Ryan.
Yeah, he's a tight end 1 this year, I think.
Top 6 tight end, maybe that's a little bit too far considering there
top
are
10,
a lot of tight ends that we like, but top 10, top 12, sure.
Yes.
I'd be willing to say top 12. Top 10, he could get to 10.
I think he can get to 10. I think he can get to 10. I do.
Any higher than that, there are a lot of good tight ends in the league. We're not sure.
Yeah, I'd have to think about it, but Matt Ryan has supported tight end 1 finishes throughout his career, so...
Austin Hooper, Hayden Hurst, Tony G.
Tony G, like early in his career. Then they had a bit of a lull period where they didn't have a tight end.
Levine Toilolo, remember him?
Yeah.
No.
I remember,
okay.
But yeah. But then they had Austin Hooper for a couple of years. He was a tight end 1 those years. They had Hayden Hurst for a year. He was a tight end 1, and then obviously Pitts last year scoring.
Who was the tight end 1?
One touchdown was a tight end 1.
Yeah.
So
he's literally had a tight end 1 for like 6 years straight.
Yeah, and a couple of those I would give the credit to Matt Ryan. Not necessarily
Hayden Hurst isn't a
talent.
wide receiver or tight end 1 by talent, and neither is Austin Hooper.
So Mo Alley Cox, baby, come on down.
Yeah. And for somebody who doesn't expect Alec Pierce to come in and light the world on fire, yeah, I think Mo Alley Cox is gonna get a fair amount of work. And fair enough, I see what you mean now. And
the video.
We'll get that out to you.
Yeah. We can.
I can also after this stream try to get some timestamps. So if you wait 10 minutes, we'll put timestamps on here so you can go through and just click and listen to your Darrell Williams.
That could also be helpful.
Yeah. The Darrell Williams segment.
Work smarter, not harder, right? Right.
Yes.
Anything else?
No, man. I think that about does it for the players that I had listed for some historical comps and just ADP deep dives.
I think it was a productive conversation.
Yeah.
Hopefully it was for everybody else as well for hopping in here. Appreciate y'all stopping by as always. Real quick, if you're not in the Discord, we can continue the conversation over there. Trade questions, general topics you want to talk about. You do not have to be a member to join the Discord. It is the second link in the description of this video and pretty much every recent video on the channel. So the link, the invite is evergreen and anybody can join. There are additional member rooms that we do give a little bit more attention to for the members. You do have to become a member to join those rooms, of course, but there are additional perks as well, which includes members-only leagues. It looks like we may have lost a member or two over the past couple of days, so we are not quite. We thought we were at the minimum as far as setting up a member league. We might need one or two people else to join, but that essentially, if you join if you join up and become a member, that eventually serves as your buy-in to these leagues, and you can play fantasy with us. The format of that is yet to be determined, but that plus additional perks, you will see those continue to trickle out throughout the offseason as we get back into the swing of things with putting out content on a more consistent basis. If that interests you, just wanted to plug that if anyone is interested who may not yet be a member. But regardless, we appreciate the support from everybody who comes in and hangs out with us during these streams on a weekly basis.
And to wrap up the last comment, the chat comment here, Slim, is going TE late a build, like going tight end 10 or 12, getting Tunyon or Irv Smith? Yeah, man, that's something that I do every year. I go
this year, yes.
Literally every year I've gone I've punted quarterback and punted tight end. Because outside of Kelsey, the variance is huge, and if you can identify some of these tight ends like your Tunyons and like your Irv Smith this year, and your Mo Alley Coxes this year, you can capitalize on other people sleeping, really, and just going based off of general consensus rankings, because really, after your top 3, top 4, maybe top 5 tight ends, it's a crapshoot. So if you can identify the good situations for the good players, and leverage later ADPs like your Tunyons and your Irv Smiths, then that just puts you in a better position roster build wise. So yeah, I don't know if it's a build. It's more of just a philosophy.
It's a strategy, yeah. This is a good year to do it, though.
0 RB or something like that. That's more of a build, but a philosophy of going tight end late. I think it's the smart way to go about it. If you
miss Kelsey and Andrews, then go
if
punt the position.
If you can't guarantee one of those bona fide top 2 options falling to you at a place that is a value to you even there, it's just a better bet to just wait and pick up a guy like Gronk.
Yeah. Like, yes, Pitts has high-end value. I would prefer he falls a little bit just because of the quarterback situation this year. Waller is high-end value. Kittle is the very cusp, but it's a little harder to give him a vote of confidence just because we don't know what Trey Lance is going to look like as far as a passing quarterback. After that, punt.
Even with those guys, those guys have warts. I mean, we're gonna see
Waller's
Waller
got
coming
a
off an
condensed
injury
target share because of Devontae Adams.
Yep.
Yeah. Pitts is catching passes from Mariota, so like, what's that gonna look like?
Right. / Desmond Ridder.
Right.
And we like them as prospects, especially in Dynasty.
Love Pitts in Dynasty, yeah.
But if we're talking for redraft for
this
one
year,
season, if I'm literally not getting Kelsey or Andrews, I am waiting.
Yeah, it's
a very long time. I'm not gonna be going and getting Waller in the 4th or the 5th. I'm not getting Pitts. I'm not around that. I'm just waiting because I think you can get a Tunyon who finished tight end 4 last time we saw him super late. You can get Gronk who finished last time we saw him tight end 3 in points per game late. So yeah, if I'm not getting the top 2 guys this year, I'm waiting. And chances are I'm not getting the top 2 guys. But yeah, I mean, that just about does it. Rojo definitely put in a claim from Mo Alley Cox in your league if he's on your free agent wire.
Hell yeah.
But thank you guys for tuning in. Again, check out the Discord if you want to keep the conversation going off stream, like Nick said. Hope everybody has a great weekend.
Fantastic long weekend. If you're grilling or if you're seeing family, hopefully it's a good time. Everybody stay healthy. Everybody stay safe.
And we will see you next week.
Yep. Everybody have a good one.
Everybody have a good bud.
Good bud.
Peace, y'all.